Expect the best used car deals guaranteed. Visit arnoldclark.com.
Welcome to Peter and Roughie's Football Show, sponsored by Arnold Clark. It is Thursday, 16th of July. I'm Peter Martin. Darren Jackson and Tam Cowan are here with me. We have a one-to-one with Edinburgh South MP Ian Murray. He's talking about a review that he's hoping will be in operation soon over Scottish football's governance. It's something that you might want to give us your thoughts on. It's a very interesting interview with Ian. Of course, he's a big Hearts fan, but of course, he has his government head on. He's written to a number of people looking into this. There's a review that's been requested from fans into British football. He wants that same inspection on Scottish football. We'll also look at Rangers and Celtic in action in the friendlies. A few clubs will be talking about their signing policies. And, of course, I must say congratulations to a guy we had on a couple of weeks ago. Jamie McDonald, the former Killie and Hearts goalkeeper, has signed a 2-year deal with Wraith Rovers. So it just goes to prove, Darren, if you come on the show, put yourself in the shop window, you get a deal.
I'm still hoping, Peter. I've never given up hope, but I'm struggling with my groin just now, so I don't know if I'd pass a medical.
Well, I'm just looking. One thing you would pass, you and Tam have decided day 2, hairdressers are open, and both of you have just steamed in. When did you get that, this morning?
No, yesterday. It was open yesterday. The hairdresser managed to fit me in at 3:30, so it took a lot longer than it normally does.
Yeah,
there was quite a lot of hair at the back. It's not too good at the front, but there was a lot of hair at the back to cut, so I was happy to get a haircut, Peter.
Yep, and Tam, he's obviously gone for the stylish look, whereas you've gone for, I think it's fair to say, Ray Winston in Scum from the 1970s, that movie.
Yes, I'll be keeping away from any greenhouses that I may come across, Peter. We all remember that scene. But no, what absolutely sickens me when you just look at Darren, these guys who had been professional footballers. I thought Darren was going to say that he's due a haircut, but he's such a trendy guy, even as he enters his twilight years, that the hair still looks that kind of rough and ready way, that trendy ex-professional footballer look, even though it's just been cut. Whereas my wife was out with the Clippers and just kind of went to town, and absolutely fine. I don't think I'll go back to a barber, to be perfectly honest with you, because it's starting now, she loves pointing out, she says it's thinning a wee bit in top. Comes to us, I'll take that at 51. But it's cool. I noticed Gordon Smith's hair hasn't changed a bit in lockdown. Do you notice that? He's still like the Chinese character out of the Benny Hill show.
Rather you say that than me. The other thing I was going to say to you, Tam, if you do get a chance just to see the difference in Darren's hair down through the years, he scored an absolute raker of a goal for Celtic up at McDermott Park, curled it into the roof of the net. And I think it was just back after his brain operation, but clearly he'd adopted the Robin Hood men in tights attitude to hair, and he had the bob, you know the one I'm on about,
Peter.
And it was a howler.
Every time I see that goal, I actually think of you, because you annihilated my hairstyle at the time. Honestly, see, when I saw it yesterday, I automatically thought of you, and I thought, you'll love that.
I love that hairstyle. I cannot believe it. You'd never have walked into a pub in Edinburgh with that hairstyle, let me tell you. No. Anyway,
and that was good there, Peter. For the first time ever since lockdown, the viewers at home all around the globe were able to get the first ever glimpse of your casting couch, the PLZ Soccer casting couch. We got a wee. We dread to think who's been on that. Well, innocent young reporters. I can get you a gig. This company's really moving. What's a disgrace. It looks like an Exhibit A 5 years down the line.
Well, listen, the point was somebody borrowed the backdrop.
There it is.
Somebody borrowed the backdrop, and I thought to myself, am I going to let everybody see the Henrik Larsson man cave? And I thought, why not? Who cares? It's all there, Tam, for everyone to see. You get to see that, Tam, if you can come to house parties when they return.
Oh, great. I'm going out for my first restaurant visit tonight, Peter. Just a wee local place that we go to a lot near my father-in-law's, and I cannot wait. I'll be eating like Lee Griffiths.
Yeah, we're going to talk about him. That's brilliantly just transition into what we're going to talk about, Friendlies. Of course, we have discussed him. He's left at home trying to get fit. I noticed Scott Brown came out and said, listen, you make sure you use your time well, Darren. He was just basically giving him the message, get yourself fit, because, I think Neil Lennon is, my impression is Neil Lennon's looking and saying, look, I can't jettison anybody out of this team this season. Everybody needs to contribute.
100%, Peter. And I think reality will probably kick in that the wee man's probably let himself down a bit if he's overweight. I've not actually spoken to him. And everyone's probably handled it differently. And he's probably a boy who needs to be out the house, needs to be going into training. Probably a bit like Gaza, Peter, that they need to be out, they need to be amongst their pals and their teammates and all that. And he's probably struggled, and as I said, let himself down. And that's just the captain, as a friend and as the captain, just giving him a little warning, because it's such a huge year for Celtic that Lenny will know they need everybody. And the way the two of the strikers played, him and Edouard, it was a fantastic partnership. Just the way Edouard comes off the game and Griffiths just plays along the line. It was a perfect partnership. So he's not wanting to let himself down, and I'm sure he'll be using the time now that reality's kicked in, that he'll be working hard trying to get back into the manager's plans.
And to be fair, I can't remember if you were specifically his agent, Darren, but you had a good and great affinity with him, a good friendship. At times, a nice, kind boy, just a wee bit daft at times. That's probably his only failing. We're all daft at times, to be honest with you.
Yeah, we are all daft at times. We all will do stupid things. And yes, I was really close with him, and I'm still close with him. I still keep in touch with him. He's one of the best finishers I've seen, especially in Scotland, Peter. The wee man just knows where the goals are. There's not a lot in his back lift when he just strikes it and from anywhere. So he's definitely needed. So as I say, hopefully reality kicks in. He's sitting in the house. The boys are going to be playing today. He would have loved to have been part of that. And you just hope he gets that wee knot in his stomach, and just to say to himself, right, here we go. I'm going to knuckle down. I'm going to get myself fit. I'm going to show the manager that I can do it. I can be a big part of his team this year.
Yeah, okay, Celtic are in action. I think a lot of Celtic fans would love to have been over in France, just not possible. They've got a friendly tonight against Lyon. It kicks off, I think, at 5:15 British time, and our reporter Gabriel Antoniazzi looks ahead to it.
Celtic kick off the Viola tournament tonight in Lyon against Nice, with kick-off at 5:15. The Scottish champions should be at full strength, except for striker Lee Griffiths, who remained in Scotland to work on his fitness. Mohamed El Yunusi has returned to fitness and could start after rejoining from Southampton, although no Fraser Forster means it will be Scott Bain in goal. Their opponents are managed by Patrick Vieira, and they finished 5th when the season was called in France back in March. They have lost 2 friendlies in the last 10 days, but boast talented players such as Kasper Dolberg and the experienced Dante, once of Bayern Munich. It will be a message of continuity from Neil Lennon, who'll hope this test can help his side hit the ground running in their quest for 10 in a row.
I don't know about you, Tam. I'm not a huge fan of pre-season friendlies. I try and avoid them like the plague. I mean, it's after you, Claude. When you're playing, nobody wants to get themselves injured at the start of the season. How do you feel about them?
Yeah, absolutely. I've said the same thing, Peter, for about 25 years now. And the very fact that clubs charge supporters to go to these games is an absolute disgrace, because they're basically glorified training sessions. And as any of my pals would back me up on this, we almost made an agreement about 10, 12 years ago now that we wouldn't go to these at Fir Park, as much as we love Motherwell, because you would go along and the games themselves are absolute guff, and it would invariably be 9 substitutions in either half, or maybe as they used to do quite a lot, they'd play one half in the for one half of the game, and then bring on a second string for the second half of the game. Absolute cack. A training session, as I say, but yet you were still expected probably to pay a minimum of tenner at the gate. So I can assure you, as much as I can't wait for Scottish football to come back, proper Scottish football, I would not dream of going out my way to watch Rangers and Celtic playing friendlies in Europe. You know, it's just not appealing at all. And of course, you've got to, I believe the games are on a subscription sports channel. So, you know, the fans are going to have to cough up for this. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think obviously from our own point of view, I'm going to have to. You know, you're smiling, Dan. I've got to watch these. I've got to watch these games because obviously it's the job. You know, tonight is, you know, first part Celtic, second part Rangers, but it's a hard watch at times unless somebody does something out of the ordinary. But you know, more often than not, I get bored out of my box with them.
Listen, Peter, I get where Tam's coming from, but sometimes if, like, when you bring teams up from down south, you have to actually pay them to come up, or you have to pay their travel up, you have to pay for a hotel and all that. So probably that's why the club probably would charge Tam. It's not to make money, it's to try and get good opposition up to Fir Park or McDermott Park or Tynecastle Easter Road, Celtic Park or Ibrox, whatever it is, whatever stadium.
But Darren, that's part of the club's preparations ahead of a season where fans pay an absolute fortune. What you're saying, if we go with your theory, then I should charge Peter Martin for me looking through the papers this morning preparing for this programme. That's very much what you're saying.
I know. I think... Well, it depends. It depends what club you're trying to get up, Tam. If you're trying to make it, you're trying to get a good club up to Fir Park, so the fans will come out to see the start of the season. You've missed it all through the summer. To say that I'm not interested, and yes, but that gets you the chance to maybe see in the second half when they do change the team, young kids that have done well pre-season coming through, and you're getting the chance to look at them. The manager gets the chance to look at them against a good opposition. So you have to play the games, because they say you're not right into the season until maybe the 7th, 8th game. Your fitness levels aren't at the highest level it should be.
Right, there's another argument, so I'll take on board what you said there. So you don't think fans should be charged until the 6th or 7th game when we're able to watch fully fit professionals? There should be a discount for those first chunk of games. That's a great idea, Darren. Well done. Brilliant.
I don't think...
that's football fitness, Tam. Not just fitness, that's football fitness. You can't get football fitness unless you play games.
See, on that note, let's ask, if you don't mind, Peter, if we can ask Darren that when we're talking about league referees. He's had a wee bit of a go at it during lockdown. And maybe my advice to Lee would maybe be don't take a slice of cake when you go to every one of your kids' birthday parties. I mean, that might have been sound advice. But what was there ever a season, Darren, that you remember with dread and you think, what a nick that summer? You really had to go at it pre-season to get back in shape.
I was very, very lucky in my career that I was only ever just over 10 stone. I actually, the clubs I was at, we actually sat down and I tried to put on weight, and I couldn't put on weight, so I could do anything. I could not, I always trained, even when I went on holiday, always went a run in the morning. But I could do, from the minute the league finished till his pre-season started, I could do actually nothing, and I wouldn't put any weight on, Tam. But I know it's different for other players. I was just lucky. I mean, I was desperate to put on weight, Tam, but I just couldn't.
Yeah, and quite a lot of hate mail,
Peter, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was just about to say, quite a lot of hate mail coming in now for Darren.
If you still want to put on weight now, Darren, let's try a thick lip. See how you go on with that.
I don't know about you, Tam, but when he said he was only ever 10 stone, I got all emotional just thinking back to 10 stone when I was 7. But nevertheless, Frank Green has said to us, Frank Green says PSG are charging £57. Frank, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's 57 quid for some Celtic fans who've tried to get tickets, albeit in a very small window of tickets available to see Celtic against PSG. And of course, PSG obviously are up to match fitness, so it's a great chance to spend 57 quid and see PSG absolutely leather Celtic, because get ready for a goals fest in that one. Anyway, apart from anything else, lots of people are talking about it, and Alan Hamilton says, "I'm the same as Darren. Wouldn't it just rip the head out of you, Tam? You're absolutely right." Anyway, apart from anything else, that's Celtic's predicament. What about Rangers? Well, our reporter Gabriel Antoniazzi looks ahead to their friendly.
Rangers start the mini-competition by facing hosts Lyon straight after the Celtic game. Steven Gerrard's men are gearing up not only for the domestic league opener at Pittodrie, but also for European football. The Europa League last 16 second leg against Bayer Leverkusen is on the 6th of August. Lyon, who was 7th in Ligue 1 last campaign, are still in the Champions League. They hold a 1-0 advantage over Juventus, and that'll be their first game back before the French season starts at the end of August. And keep an eye out for midfielder Houssem Aouar and of course Moussa Dembele, who scored 7 goals against Rangers for Celtic. Now, Gers fans will be excited to see the likes of Yanis Hadji and Alfredo Morelos lining up in their new kit for the first time. Kickoff is 7:45.
Yep, this is one of those games where I think the Rangers players will relish it. They certainly were looking forward to it on their way out at Glasgow Airport to get ready for this game. It's Lyon against Rangers. It's a time where, again, they've been linked with a move for Bongani Zungu from Amiens in France. But over and above that, Darren, you get Stephen Davis saying that the likes of himself and Alan McGregor will have to show their experience to try and, help people who are going to be in this stopping 10 in a row charade that we're on at the moment. But over and above that, you've got Stephen Davis saying he wants Morelos to stay. It's just this ongoing saga that never goes away, Darren.
Yes, I think to try and they'll be hoping the transfer window closes and he is still there, Peter. He is going to play a big part. I know he's not scored. He didn't score from the after the 29th. He's not scored since then. But he is a goal scorer. He will score goals for Rangers, and they need him this year. And I'm a big fan of Steve Davis. I thought he started the season very, very well, but kind of tailed off a little. And McGregor's been incredible for Rangers. So they are going to play a big part. Their experience is going to be massive to Rangers this year, and obviously Morelos' goals are going to be huge as well.
Yeah, I've got to make a special mention to quite a lot of people who join us on Facebook and YouTube. Always like to give them a mention. Wayne Feehan is watching in Perth, Australia. Thanks, Wayne, for joining in. There are so many different countries that we get with lots of fans who watch it live or wait and watch it in the repeat. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. The thousands and thousands of people who are now watching the programme and joining the football family. And I can tell you, we've got a fantastic competition coming up shortly, and we're going to give away lots of prizes. We're just waiting. I think I managed to show you last night, Darren, just one part of the marketing campaign, which will result in lots of prize giveaways. It's, without giving the secret away, it looks not bad, doesn't it?
It looks great, yeah. Top players, Peter. Yeah, looks fantastic.
And without giving away Without giving away your fees,
mine's coming through.
Yours is going to be there, Darren. Tom?
Without giving away your fees, Peter, this is the only programme where the presenters are allowed to take part in the competitions.
You're good, Matt. I was going to say something. I'm not even going to bother with it because it'll get me in trouble. Anyway, apart from anything else, hi to lots of people who are joining us who want to talk football on the programme. We welcome it. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can like, share, and follow on Facebook. One of the things that did, Tam, we laugh about it all the time when you read some headlines. I laughed when Ian Cathro says if the 2 posts had been taken away, Hearts would have won the match. I mean, that was a classic. I remember Craig Brown, who I love dearly, said, if we had more corners than them in Darren's days when he played for Scotland. But this one really, really took the biscuit. It was Nikola Katic this morning, and I read it and I thought, Really? Really? Rangers would have been champions if they'd played Celtic every week. I mean, there's a great Scottish word that he needs to look up, havering. I mean, is he for real?
I mean, really, when I read that myself, we would be champions if we played Celtic every game. It makes absolutely no sense because it's a scenario that is never, ever, ever going to happen. That's like me saying I'd be a great fighter if I was 20 feet tall and I could breathe fire. It's just complete nonsense. What does it mean? I wish at this time of the season, it is called the silly season for a reason, Peter, this time of year before a season begins. And I'm fed up of former... Now, this always flips about. When Rangers had their run of winning the title, there'd been Celtic players doing this, ex-Celtic players. Even maybe Darren's been caught up in this as an ex-Celt himself. But what we're getting to know, it seems, every single day in the papers is a rake of ex-Rangers players saying that, if Steven Gerrard buys 2 players, they'll be unstoppable. They will win the league next season. This will happen, this will happen, this will happen. And I think fans, I think even new Rangers fans would take it with a pinch of salt. The Rangers fans, if I was a Rangers fan, I want all the talking to be done on the pitch this season instead of reading all this stuff. Because last year as well, a variety of current Rangers players mid-season were saying, right, we can win this league, but we know we now need to win the next 9 games. That's imperative. Bang. They maybe lost the very first one of the 9 to Hamilton Accies, or they drew with Ross County, and then they're out against somebody else next week. We can. That was a slip, but we can still do this. Wait a minute. You said there that you had to win 9 in the bounce to have any chance, and you didn't do that. Fans, they must think fans just zip up the back, Do not believe any of this cack.
Yeah, it's a great thing you say, because I know Roy Keane, that was one of his mantras, stop bleating on in the press about it, go out there and actually do it. And I'm glad you pointed out there, Tam, the role reversal on it, because I can remember, Darren, in Rangers 9 in a row, the amount of what I would call mediocre Celtic players coming out and bleating on about this was the turning point, this game that they managed to get one win out of 4 against Rangers, and they would go, this is the turning point, and you think to yourself, really? It was just one of those things where it's almost a false hope, but people can actually see through it. I remember a situation where, there was this build-up of Celtic are finally turning the tables and matching Rangers, and it was a game at Celtic Park, and Mark Haight laid the ball in the back of the net, and it was about 35 seconds gone. I mean, it was that quick, because they had better players, and anybody who couldn't see it or smell it or wake up and realise what was going on, it's good players, it's players that are in a team, Darren, that are capable of winning it, and I am waiting to see the 2 or 3 players that Tam's referenced there that have got to come in to change Rangers' fortunes. They still need 2 or 3 for me.
Well, we said it the other day there, Peter. It's okay being good enough to play for Celtic and Rangers. It's handling the pressure, and this year, and this isn't putting any real pressure on Rangers, because they're probably not going to listen to what I'm saying, but it's handling the pressure of stopping 10 in a row this year. We spoke the other day there about Damien Duff speaking about Callum McGregor, and we spoke about Scott Brown and others in the Celtic team, but there's 2 players that turn up for the big games, can handle the big games, and every game this year is going to be big. And if I can go back to papers I've got to sell, journalists and that have got to sell papers, Peter. And I kind of go back to Aberdeen and Hearts when they challenged in the last couple of years. Now they go to ex players and ask, can they do it? Can they stop Celtic winning the league? And they go and talk in the papers and all that. See, the managers should just ban papers from the players buying papers, and ban them from the dressing room and all that, because the pressure is enough with the other. You know what you have to do. You know what pressure it's going to be. But other people coming out, ex-Aberdeen players, yes, they can go and win the league. They know how hard it is. They should just say they're giving it as good a go as they can. And I'm not talking about Rangers this year, Aberdeen and Hearts, giving it a great go. We'll just see what happens in the next few games.
Yeah, I thought for 1 minute there, Tam, that he was. I mean, I thought Darren was just actually throwing the biggest grenade ever, saying "ban the papers." I thought he was just. I thought he was eliminating my fellow journal's jobs. I was in a blind panic there, trying to defend him.
No, I mean, as I say, they've got this. Yeah, sorry, Tam, go on.
No, you're all right. I'm just saying the papers are having a hard enough time now without Darren trying to get sales. Really, I sometimes feel I'm the only guy left in Scotland that buys newspapers. I still get my massive bundle. I've got a big rake of them due to go out the now. If I can edge these out into shop, Peter, you can probably... There's another... When have you ever seen... When's the last time you saw a collection of newspapers like that? They're even just the ones for this week. So, I mean, it's a hard time for the papers. I enjoyed 29 years with them up until last June, and you know what I'm like, Peter. I would still love nothing more to get one last throw of the dice with a newspaper. It's in your blood, stuff like that. And I know you've, from time to time in the past, done your fair bit in the newspapers as well. You know, it's a shame what's happening in the industry. But I wonder if times like this, when sales are on the way, and if they need to rumble it up, like maybe get one of the papers to pay Alec Gray, let's say, to come out and say that he fancies Celtic for 10 in a row, and he thinks Rangers will be lucky. he thinks Rangers will be lucky for a top 6 next season. And you know, I mean, I think, you know, just to get the sales going up, you know, and Alec gets a wee bung, I think that would be terrific.
Well, I don't want to preempt it, by the way, because it could happen, but there's more chance of Darren regrowing his bob from 1998, to be perfectly honest with you. Another thing that caught my eye...
Regrowing,
excuse me.
Regrowing his what?
His bob.
His what? Oh, his bob. I thought he'd been involved in a terrible industrial accident.
Another thing I was going to say to you guys, this is interesting, because Derek McInnes has come out and said that, you know, Aberdeen will be backing the Black Lives Matter campaign. Now, I don't want to go heavily into it, but I'm going to be brutal enough about it. I think everybody, you know, make the stance, take the knee. But for me, Darren, I think people should... In fact, I'll get Tam's thoughts on this first, because it's probably better placed from being out with the old firm madness, first of all. For me, I was listening to the comments of James McLean. Now, James McLean is not everybody's cup of tea, Tam. I get that. He's done some stupid things, but he's suffered a hell of a lot of abuse. And Niall McGuinness came out. He was speaking on a radio station in Ireland, talking about the fact that, you know, a lot more needs to be done to support players who are subjected to the abuse, but especially sectarian abuse. And I think this is something that, you know, James McLean mentioned it in the case of, you know, everybody's standing up and saying Black Lives Matter, but nobody really backed his case when he was getting bullets in the post. Niall McGinn said he got his bullets in the post. I think in certain quarters, it's not as heavily dealt with as the situation we have. I mean, I work as an ambassador for Show Racism the Red Card, and they deal with racism, they deal with sectarianism, they deal with abuse for anybody of ethnic minority, and the religious abuse that comes as well. I think our country is very guilty of it, not making a stance on something that's absolutely poisoned our country more than the... You know, and I'm not saying sectarianism is any more worthy than racism, but I think both of them should have an equal, consistent, solid approach to educating people and to trying to protect people who are suffering from the abuse. Am I way out of order on that?
Well, as you know, Peter, I love it when you throw it to me if it's a debate on sectarianism or racism, because you want to put one foot wrong here and basically you set Facebook on fire. But certainly with the sectarian stuff, and we've obviously had problems with that in Scottish football for mere years than I care to remember. As a Motherwell fan, I must be perfectly blunt. Looking at it for the outside in, I just kind of chuckle at it, the madness of it all, and I wish folk could just get on with it and concentrate on the football. Simple as that. As far as Darren McManus saying about the Aberdeen players and the Black Lives Matter movement, then yeah, that's fine. That's down to the individual, because I think UEFA as good as brought out a directive in saying that if any of its member clubs and therefore their players wanted to take part in this particular protest, then it was simply down to the individual. So anybody who feels strong about that, let them go on with it. And then the minute the whistle goes, let's get on with the football and try to keep politics, even though it's for the good of everyone, you know, and to heighten the awareness of certain campaigns. Some things that are absolutely beyond the pale in terms of how much we abhor them and we hate the very idea of racism and sectarianism and all the rest of it. But let's kind of get it out the way with whatever form of protest you want. And then the minute that whistle goes, please, 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 let us concentrate on the football. But you know what, Peter, I'll give you a wee bit of a positive spin here. I just wonder, and I'm sure the pair of you there will agree with us, the general mood that, almost without over-egging us or being a dramatist, the general mood that man has had to his fellow man over the past 120 days or whatever, there seems to be a better kind of feeling from brother to brother, if you like, you know. And I just wonder if, for all the campaigns that have gone on during this lockdown period, for all the stuff we have seen on Black Lives Matter, there have, of course, been a lot of times that sectarianism has been mentioned in a variety of even social media forums, etc. I just wonder if, when we go back, if football will suddenly be a better place, a cleaner place almost, if you like, in terms of chance, in terms of rivalry and all the rest of it. I may be speaking out my backside there. Probably for the minute we start back, Peter, and you're nodding your head, we'll be back to the way it has always been, you know, but you never know. We can all hope.
Tam, you know, I actually was listening there, and again, I started to get dewy-eyed midway through what you were talking about there, and I thought to myself, wow, I hope Tam is able to follow Dorothy, Toto, the Tin Man, and the Scarecrow all the way along that yellow brick road. But I really think you should get the feed of our Facebook and YouTube at times, which just gives you a real indication of that undercurrent of lunacy. I mean, I do like Neil Jameson's, who's actually sent us a message on Facebook, and he says, "What about fatism?" We've already had that, Neil, from Darren, who's been 10 stone all his life. I mean, come on. Yeah, and of course,
you know what I like. You know what,
Reid.
Peter? See me, guys like him, whoever was saying about the fatism, you're good at this as well. I like when you trace these guys, you do the forensic bit, you go to their biog, you dig into some of their posts, you scroll down, hoping that you finally find a photo of them. And he's like a big 24-stone munter. The same sort of guy that shouts at Chris Boyd and Mark Yardley for being fat, and he's shitting like that, and his Facebook photo, he's in a swimming pool in Alicante or somewhere, you know. So do a bit of digging there, please.
Tam, I have to tell you, you'll never believe this, but, you know, in those nights when it's 11:30 and somebody is giving you absolute pelters, that's what I do. I just go in and look, and then I look for the Achilles heel, and then I smash them back. Although I have to say, Darren,
absolutely,
on many a football game where I absolutely love playing in the middle of the park, as you know, the amount of people who've just picked a fight with me, just on the basis of trying to unnerve me on that whole thing as well, is an absolute joy. I love it. What I don't like, and Rob Reid is probably a fair indication of some of the people who have got, you know, a fixation in their head about what a person is and what he deserves. And this is one of the problems. Rob Reid, I'm going to read out what he said, is McLean deserved everything he got. And that is the problem right there, with the whole situation with people who make a stance on anything. And if you don't like it, and you then take this attitude of he deserves everything he gets. Nobody deserves bullets in the post. Nobody deserves abuse and feeling threatened in their life because of a stance they take. If it's wrong and it's abusive that a person has taken a stance on it, and remember, it is a democracy, then, you know, they can be open to criticism. But abuse, I don't think so. Rob, I think you're well off the mark there with that comment. But it's one of those ones that believe me, it can open up a can of worms non-stop. So that's Niall McGinn. He made the comment. It's in the day's papers. I thought I'd mention it.
I think,
Adams,
Peter, can I just say, Peter, I just think, I really genuinely, from my heart, hope and pray that we never get to the stage where the humour is taken out of football because of some of the off-field issues that go hand in hand with it. Because that would be a day when we'd all be as well chucking it, players and fans alike. When you take out a lot of the nonsense for Scottish football, there is so much to enjoy. You think how many times you've been inside a football stadium with a giant smile on your face. How many times you've been in a ground and you've been laughing like a drain in the company of your pals. It is brilliant. And the more we allow the poisonous element to kind of infiltrate that is terrible. And I'll be brutally honest with you, in terms of, you know, what you can laugh about now, what you can't laugh about. The minute you said that Derek McInnes is back in the Black Lives Matter campaign, it was in the tip of my tongue to say, well, he was a black man in the 1990s. Right, everybody used to do the gags about Derek and his fondness for a sunbed and all the rest of it. But you're now thinking twice about making a wee joke, and because there's so many folk that want to complain, so many folk that rather going for the perpetrators, the folk who are bringing the bile to Scottish football, before you know it, they're wanting to have a go at the guys who are hopefully trying to add a wee bit of fun and a wee bit of enjoyment. Makes me sick.
Yeah, absolutely. Although I have to say, I'm so glad we're not out in the after-dinner circuit in the last 4 months, Tam, because we would have had to have said, I love it when you say it, Darren. He stands up and he'll give one of his opening 2 rockets to the crowd, and he'll go, it's just a joke. It's almost as if comedians have to remind people. I mean, it's like Ricky Gervais at the Golden Globe Awards. You know, he says, it's just a joke. We're all going to die. You need to be able to laugh. You can be self-deprecating. You can laugh at yourself. Obviously, I emphasise the fact is the abuse. I don't think it will change. But nevertheless, it's a point that's always going to be discussed. We won't shirk the issue on the programme. Charlie Adam, I was mentioning there, Darren, he fancies a return to Scottish football. I wonder about Charlie. He's got a wand of a left foot. Would he be top end of the Premier League? Is that what he's hoping for?
Well, he's playing Championship with Reading just now. Now we all know we're speaking about weight. I don't know if Charlie's in good nick, but yes, a wonderful left foot, Peter. I think he could come up here, sit in the middle of the park, and the experience we're talking about experience for Rangers and handling things. Charlie's been down there, fantastic for Blackpool. Went and did well for Liverpool. Going to Stoke. And he can play. There's no doubt he can play. And I think he could come up and, as I say, sit in the middle of the park and just dictate things, use his experience of where he's been down south, been at Rangers, and help young kids and help a team. Yes, I think Charlie could play.
Yeah, do you know the strange thing about it, Tam? I know money's in short supply. I'm not too sure many clubs would be able to afford him, but he's made a barload, and he's a lovely guy. He's a brilliant lad, and he's been through so much. I mean, we had a brilliant interview with him when he was down at Blackpool. But in the last maybe year or two of his career, wouldn't it be great if he could join a Hearts or a Hibs or a Kilmarnock or something like that, and just give so many kids the joy of seeing him strutting his stuff in the last 12 months, 24 months?
I would take him at Motherwell in a flash, Peter. We were talking just a few weeks ago when we had Gary Harkins, one of the last studio guests, may have been the last that we had before lockdown, and we were bemoaning the fact that the minute Gary hung up his boots, we're kind of saying to see the last of the Mavericks. The Maverick being, in Scottish terms, a guy who maybe traditionally carrying a couple of pounds extra weight, but he's invariably somebody that doesn't mind a wee fancy and is up for entertaining the fans. And I just think if you brought Charlie Adam back up, absolutely, I would take him at Motherwell. I could see him coming back up here, maybe going to a Hearts, a Hibs, maybe Aberdeen, Dundee United, I don't know who. I don't think money would be the issue. Charlie's not a daft boy. I've only had a couple of wee dealings with him, a wee couple of messages on social media and that. He's not a daft lad. He's made his money, as you say, and he would know that there's no way he's going to come up to the Premiership in Scotland, particularly now, in the era of COVID-19 and the economic recession, and be able to demand the same sort of money that he was used to down south. So I think it'd be a win-win situation. If he came up, he'd be delighted to be back home. He'd be able to, as Darren says, plonk him in the middle of the park and say, right, Charlie, just you tie up the loose ends for defence to attack, go out there and strut your stuff. A wee bit, I've not mentioned him this week so far, a wee bit like maybe Davy Cooper was encouraged today at Motherwell. You know, they didn't expect him to be anything as good as he was at Fir Park. You know, they were thinking he could just have gone out and encouraged a few players. But as Darren will remember, having played against him quite a bit back in the day, suddenly he was the main man in the team. And I don't know, what age is Charlie Adam just now? What is he?
I was thinking he was about 34, 35, yeah. And the other thing about it, if he's, he's not going to earn a lot. He's going to have to take a huge hit on the wages, Dan. But if he really wants to come back to Scotland and earn a lot of money, then he just joins one of the Lowland League clubs like East Kilbride or Kelty and just signs for them, Dan.
I know. This week's been incredible with the signings.
You're getting a free house and a free boat and a car as well. There's got to be something happening down there. They're all signing. Chris Erskine for East Kilbride. Mother of God.
But listen, I think it'll be Charlie's desire. Charlie looks as though he just loves playing football. I think it'll be his desire to come back and just show everybody up here. We know he can play. We saw it when he was down south. But just to come back up here and enjoy it and pass on his experience. If you listen to Charlie on the television, Peter, he's a very good talker. I mean, he's been on a few shows down south. He comes over very well. And I think he just that experience in the middle of the park, he might be looking to get into coaching. So he comes up and he takes maybe the reserves or the 20s, whatever it is, and helps them along as well. So, yeah, I think it would be a good signing for someone, as I say, a Motherwell or a Hearts or a Hibs.
Yeah, Shane says he'd take him at St Mirren in a heartbeat. James Ferry says, if Rangers bring Charlie back, I would bring Charlie Tully back to Celtic as well, about the same age, he said. Very unkind, because Charlie Adam is 34 years of age.
He played for St Mirren, Peter, didn't he?
Yeah, he played for St Mirren. He was good. They gave him a loan deal there when he wasn't getting into the Rangers team. But from there, when he left Rangers, never looked back. Ross County have managed to get Carol Tremarco for a year. He's 7 years at Inverness. And of course, he won the Scottish Cup, part of that great Scottish Cup team of 2015, I think it was, for Inverness, winning the Scottish Cup with John Hughes as the manager. They've added 5 players up there at Ross County, so clearly making a move on things. One great little bit, Tam, that I saw in the papers down south over the last day was Kenny Dalglish will be picked to hand out the Premier League medals to the Liverpool players. 30 years ago, he was the manager guiding Liverpool to it. So as an ambassador there, I think it's a brilliant tribute. After the Chelsea game next Wednesday, Kenny comes out and hands them their medals. Couldn't get any better.
Absolutely. I mean, I know a lot of these players now, foreign players, come into big English clubs like Liverpool, and they'll hit the local media with the usual claptrap when they join about how they've always been a Liverpool fan and they used to always watch Liverpool and they can't believe they're at Anfield now. But in this instance, I think any footballers, when they were young kids growing up, if they remember Kenny Dalglish in his pomp at Liverpool when he was just absolutely magical, then I still think that would be a bit of a thrill for them to receive their medal from the one and only Sir Kenny Dalglish, who many would argue was our, maybe one and only truly world-class player. I know a lot of folk, and Peter, you're about to shout Danny McGrain at me. Yep, I would maybe give you Danny as well. But you know what I mean? In terms of the entertainers, in terms of the type of player who always put a smile on your face, who always entertained the fans, I think Kenny was maybe streets ahead globally. When you see what he achieved in Europe, way Liverpool.
Yeah, well, as you know, Tam, we've got a Kenny Dalglish room in our offices, the Sir Kenny Dalglish suite, where we all sit down and have our meetings, which has been that long ago. And of course, we all have our man caves, Darren. I mean, only a stone's throw from this Henrik Larsson suite is the Sir Kenny Dalglish room. I'm just saying to you, if you're staying over one night, Darren, you'll be in the Kenny Dalglish room. It's as simple as that. It's all there. Now, just before we get to a couple other things I want to talk about as well. Have a listen to Ian Murray, the MP, guys. I'm desperate to get your thoughts on what he has to say. I caught him just before he was getting on a flight to London a couple of hours ago, and this was what he was saying on this review that he's calling for. Well, I'm delighted to say our special guest is the Labour MP for Edinburgh South, Ian Murray. Ian, thanks for joining us on the show. It's an interesting suggestion that you're making. You're obviously calling for a review of the governance of the game, not only in Britain, but in Scotland. What do you hope to achieve from this?
Well, it's great to be on, Peter. And essentially what happened was the Conservative and the Labour opposition had in our manifestos back in December for the UK government to do a fan-led review from the grassroots up into English football. And I just thought, given that COVID and this crisis has shone a light on the deficiencies in Scottish football, that the UK government should really invite the devolved administrations to input into that as well. So fans across the UK can use their shared experiences to try and look at the game as afresh and make sure it can be secured for the future. That's really what's behind this.
Yeah, obviously you're going to put this suggestion to the Sports Minister, Nigel Huddleston. Of course, Joe Fitzpatrick undoubtedly would be involved in a Scottish sense. Have you had encouraging words from them beforehand to suggest that this might get a bit of traction?
Well, certainly had encouraging words from the UK government that they want to do this review. I've been working very closely with my colleague Alison McGovern, who's the Shadow Sports Minister for the Labour opposition at Westminster. And she's very much pushing for this fan-led review to get up and running as quickly as possible, not just because it's really important that our national sport in the UK is protected, but also that the issues that have been around for some time that COVID has brought to the fore are looked at in terms of governance, in terms of financial stability, the pyramid system, how you support the grassroots. All of that's incredibly important. And I just think that if the UK government's doing this, then the Scottish government should be invited to participate so we can look at this in the round. And also, if the Scottish government didn't want to participate or the UK government were not keen on including other nations in this, then the Scottish government should perhaps look to looking at the SPFL and the SFA to do a full review in Scotland.
Yeah, well, listen, we've had two think tanks already with a lot of money spent on them over the last 2-3 decades. What in particular concerns you about the governance of Scottish football at the moment?
Well, it doesn't just concern me, but it concerns supporters, and they're the lifeblood of the game. And if you look at the analysis that was done by the Scottish Football Supporters Association just a few months ago, it showed that 87% of fans thought that the game would be better run if they had a proper voice, and 84% thought that they were shut out of making decisions in Scottish football. And I think when you've got a membership organisation, that means that the clubs have got to look after the whole, but do that on the basis of their own self-interest. And that's not a criticism, because directors of football clubs have a legal responsibility to look after their club, the financial stability of their club, and holding that membership of the overall organisation. I think the governance needs to be looked at. And I was very struck this week by a conversation that was struck up by Donald Findlay and others, who suggested you might want to look at the American commissioners model who could be elected in. So there's a whole host. I wouldn't like to preempt what this would look like, but the number of talking shops that have been done in the past and the other reviews have just been that. They haven't really gone anywhere. And I think when we get nostalgic about looking back at the Scotland games that have been replayed on BBC during this COVID lockdown and wonder if the national team will ever get back to a major championships, and we're worried about whether or not clubs will actually survive this crisis, I think it's an opportune moment to look at how the solidity of Scottish football could be improved and how we can look to the future with much better governance that has the lifeblood of the game, which is the supporters, right at the heart of it.
Well, when any kind of review is in place, I mean, I spoke to Lachlan Cameron of Ayr United almost 3 months ago as we were hitting the start of the lockdown. There was a suggestion of ending the season early. All of that was right at the front of everyone's mind. And he suggested the commissioner for the benefit of all clubs. But as you know, in Scottish football, and the evidence of what I would call personally despicable behaviour from some clubs over the last 3 to 4 months, they will dig their heels in and say, listen, whether it's fans or whether it's government, we are a business, so stop intruding on an organisation which is governed by a set of rules and articles of association.
Well, absolutely, but times do have to move on, and sometimes circumstances dictate that. And I wouldn't criticise any club for looking after the viability of their own club and looking after their own supporters. That's what they're there to do, but they're also custodians of the game. And I think that has to be looked at within the round. And it's not just about the Premiership or indeed the current crisis that Scottish football has been going through with COVID. It's about the grassroots, it's about the pyramid system, it's about the national team, it's about the supporters, it's about fit and proper people who are able to run football clubs. It's all of those things. And I think that debate taking place in advance of a crisis like we've just seen over the last few months is the wrong time to have it. I think in the cold light of day, reflecting on where we are as a country in terms of a national sport would be a really good opportunity to look back at where the problems are and to try and resolve those. Now, nobody's claiming to have any of the answers to this, but unless we start asking the questions, we're never going to be able to get to anywhere close to the answers. And I think supporters feel a little bit fed up. I mean, it doesn't really matter which football club you support. We all are football fans and we all care passionately about the clubs that we support, but we also care passionately about the game. And we're also significantly worried that post-COVID, the game might not survive in its current form, but also if it does survive and it's able to move forward, how do we change the structures of the game to make sure that it is strong for the future and that we have something that we can be proud of? We shouldn't have clubs arguing with each other, taking each other to court, trying to make sure that the Articles of Association are underpinned by case law through the Scottish courts. That's just surely not the way for the game to go. And the only people that suffer in all of that are the supporters, and that's what I'm trying to protect here.
Yeah, and just picking up on that point, you mentioned obviously the percentages of fans feeling alienated, and of course, a lot of fans think if they were consulted more, they could make the game better. Do you think the lack of trust that has emerged, that's prompted maybe yourself and others to look for a review, has started with, first of all, primarily at the start of COVID, the call for the season to end early, and of course the vote which has taken place, which basically ruled out any reconstruction? Do you think that was really the catalyst for where we are now?
Well, I think it's the catalyst for where we are now, but I think it's the two issues that have shone a light on the governance of the game and how the game copes with these kinds of crises. The game's been sort of plodding along for some time now with a lack of money compared to our European counterparts, with instability at clubs, with fans having to save their clubs. All of those big issues have been around for a long time. And indeed, the McLeish Review, which was 15 years ago, most of those recommendations haven't been implemented, and Henry speaks very clearly about those. But those two instances that you've talked about, I think fans just had their head in their hands. It didn't matter which club you supported, but the shenanigans that went on or otherwise, the issues that went on about votes and people changing votes, the accusations that were firing here, there and everywhere, that just really wasn't good for the game and just showed up how difficult and how opaque our governance systems are in Scottish football. And it is a membership organisation, so the members do have to look after the game and be the custodians of the game. But I don't think anybody will come out of the next few months, in the past few months of Scottish football, with any great credit. And it's a real shame that we've ended up where we've ended up, because I would have thought that if your primary aim is to look after the stability and the future of the 42 member clubs of the SPFL, then that should have been the only and primary aim. There should have been no detriment to anyone when this kind of global pandemic hits that nobody could have envisaged. And therefore there was ways to ensure that that would happen, but individual member clubs decided that they wouldn't take that route, and that's why we've ended up in the mess that we're in.
Yeah, some cynics would look and say, oh, Ian Murray, he's just actually looking after the club that he supports, Hearts. This is what's driving him on because of the injustice that he feels.
Well, I mean, that's a valid criticism, and indeed, of course, I'm devastated that Hearts have been relegated. There's a big argument to suggest that perhaps they were the worst team in the league and deserved the relegation in any case. But look at the state of the situation with Partick Thistle. 2 points behind with a game in hand, had been on a pretty good run of form, and have been demoted to a division that may not play football. I mean, that is the issue we've got here. So if you take the clubs out of it, and just put yourself in the situation of the circumstances that people have been faced with. Clubs have been demoted to leagues when league seasons haven't been concluded by changing the rules through a vote of the member clubs to leagues that potentially may not play football for the foreseeable future. That's surely not the right thing to do. And indeed, when you look at the potential issues that might have come about, and it's a great talking point to have, Peter, but could you imagine if Celtic and Rangers were equal on points and equal on goals at the top of the league, with Celtic going for 9 in a row and Hearts, St Mirren, Hamilton, Ross County were all on equal points and equal goals at the bottom of the league? How on earth would that have been equitable to resolve? So there's a lot of big issues here, and I just think that Scottish football should have maybe said that nobody should be suffering any detriment with regards to this crisis, and how do we make sure that all 42 clubs come through this without any damage? And that doesn't seem to be the overriding principle. And if I could just say as well that what is something that's missing in all of this isn't just the supporters, but there's thousands of jobs at risk here, not just player contracts and players themselves, but all of the staff involved in our football clubs who work incredibly hard for not tremendous amounts of reward, who can end up out of jobs in all of this. And I think that's a travesty.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Just a couple of points before you go, Ian. I know you're heading off on a plane. I want to talk to you just quickly about the Hearts situation with Partick Thistle. What would you like to see happen in arbitration here?
Well, I mean, it's very difficult to see how anything can happen now without there being detriment to others. And I think that was what Anne Budge and Jackie Lowe were trying to avoid with the reconstruction proposals, to make sure there was no detriment. Now, if nothing happens and there's no changes, Stranraer, Partick Thistle and Hearts will suffer significant detriment. If the relegations and demotions are overturned, then you're going to have Dundee United, Raith Rovers and others very, very upset that they aren't getting promoted. And if you have a financial payout in terms of compensation, that's going to significantly hamper the finances at a time when Scottish football needs every single penny it gets. So there is now no winners in this. And what, to be fair to Anne Budge, was trying to do at the very start of that was to make sure there were no losers. And now we're going to end up with no winners. And I think that's quite disappointing.
Yeah, and can you understand the anger that's surfaced in the last 24 hours from Hearts and Partick Thistle when suddenly they've said, by the way, we know you feel aggrieved and you're in an arbitrary process, but we're also going to serve a notice of complaint because you broke our rules?
Well, I think that just sums up, Peter, the conversation we've just had over the last 10 minutes, because the reaction to the SFA, who've been strangely quiet over the last 4 months, when member clubs are trying to make sure they can protect their own clubs, but also be the custodians of football during a global pandemic. The Scottish Football Association threaten clubs with expulsion when they're trying to protect their own interests. I think it's an incredibly difficult argument for the SFA to make, and I think Lord Clark, during the Court of Session case, said quite clearly that the threat of expulsion, or I think the terminology that was used, throwing them out, was something that he wouldn't entertain. And that's really not the best place to start an arbitration when clubs are trying to settle something that has been made worse by the organisations that are now issuing complaints against clubs. It's a real mess. And I think actually it's probably the one example that we could point to of why a fan-led review into Scottish football is so much needed.
And just on that final point on that then, with this review in mind, if we are reviewing a current situation which has been a debacle in my view, other people may well have their own points of view on it, but surely at that point any fan review would look and question the way the SPFL board has conducted itself and the chief executive as well.
Well, people have to take responsibility. I don't want to be casting aspersions because, we only do this by reading the newspapers and watching great shows like your own in terms of the information that we've got. But I do think people do have to reflect on where we are. They do have to reflect on the fact that we've ended up in a situation where we've stopped a season, clubs have been demoted, the very existence of clubs is being called into question. And I really do wonder what will happen when the chief executive of the SPFL's telephone rings and it's a club chairman saying to the SPFL chief executive that they can no longer continue. That would be a real dereliction of duty for the SPFL to have to look at clubs that disappear over this crisis, because the main thing for me, and this is why I've been calling for this, is every 42 member clubs have to get through this. They have to be able to survive, and jobs and players and fans have to have their teams to go back to and their teams to support. That should just have been the guiding principle all the way along. I think people from the outside looking in will wonder what on earth Scottish football has been doing over the last 4 months, because it seems to have taken a crisis and made it worse when everybody else and every other sector is trying to make it better.
Yeah, Ian, at this point, I'm going to say to you, we're going to end the interview. I'm going to track what's happening with this review very, very closely indeed. Second of all, just to leave you with this point as well, I am going to pin you down to chat to you about your Hearts book as well, because that's been at the forefront of my mind for more than a few weeks. But we will get round to that and talk about the Jambos at a later date. But again, safe journey and stay safe and well, and thanks for joining us.
You're very kind, Peter. Thanks very much. And I'll make sure that the second edition of the book's got more pictures in it for Roughie.
Couldn't have put it better myself. Thank you. Yeah, interesting. And I'll get your thoughts on it, guys, because quite simply, again, politicians, it does something unbelievable to so many people who are on here. And I want to mention a few of them. But first of all, Tam, what do you make of it?
Well, sadly now, Peter, I think the only outcome here is that Hearts, Partick Thistle and Stranraer will accept a greatly reduced compensation package. That's the only way I can see this being resolved, if resolved isn't too strong a word. I couldn't believe when I read about the SFA wanting to, charge Hearts and Partick Thistle, bringing the game into disrepute or whatever. I mean, Hearts and Partick Thistle, I've stood shoulder to shoulder with them since the start of this debacle. No club should be punished simply due to a global pandemic. Anybody that I've spoken to at Hearts or at Partick Thistle have said hand in heart that, if the season had been played to a finish and then they had been relegated, that they would have accepted it for being ranked rotten the whole season. But that certainly wasn't the case. And it's the Partick Thistle scenario that really, really sticks in my throat. As Ian Murray himself there said, good on him. He didn't even put the focus in Hearts. He said the Partick Thistle scenario, 2 points behind with a game in hand. And there they go, tatty bye-bye. That is like, Peter, let me remind you, that is like if Rangers had been 2 points behind Celtic with a game in hand and they'd stopped the league and crowned Celtic champions. Can you imagine the backlash from something like that? So it is absolutely ridiculous. I sadly don't think it is going to be properly resolved now. I think Hearts, Partick Thistle and St Mirren, as I say, are going to accept a greatly reduced compensation package, and they're just going to have to take their medicine. But the whole thing absolutely stinks. And you know what? As much as Ian Murray is saying that we need to have a change here of governance, we've heard this just about every year. We've heard it just about every month with critics of the SPFL, critics of the SFA. If it doesn't happen now, after the absolute mess that Scottish football got itself into during lockdown, then it's never going to happen.
Can I just at this moment quickly apologise to some of the people who've had to witness some of the shocking and abusive messages that have come up on Facebook and YouTube. And again, I always emphasise, and always try and do it in a jocular fashion, but Ronnie Porter said I should be ashamed of myself for having him on. Ronnie, you are so wide of the mark it defies belief. This man is an MP who is actually calling for something which involves football. It's a statement which was made this morning, and he was very much a pertinent guest. For Niall Kane, I'll educate you, Niall, on the point. This is a football show, and you say politics shouldn't be involved in it. Unfortunately, you're very naive if you don't think politics and sport mix. It has very much a part to play in this programme. We deal with the issues that are, unfolding and emerging every day that affect Scottish football. Whether you like Ian Murray's politics or not is fine. Put your point across, but don't be abusive and vitriolic. And I would say to Andrew Breslin, Andrew, this is not the show for you. You need to go to the absolute gutter with your language and go on another programme. It's not for you, Andrew. It's a football show. He is pertinent to what we're talking about and how it will affect Scottish football. If the review gets off the ground and starts to gather pace, with football fans who've called for it, then there may well be changes that affect your club. Whether it gets anywhere, I have my doubts, because at the end of the day, if anything, Scottish football has showed a tremendous amount of self-interest, self-preservation, backstabbing, and people who are in power certainly don't want to give it away and certainly don't want to be scrutinised by government officials or any review which involves fans. You only have to read some of the fans who are disenchanted with clubs who won't listen to them on this show. Never mind Scotland, but England, all across Europe and the world as well. Fans want to be heard, want changes to be made for the betterment of the game. But some of the comments on here about Ian Murray there, you need to have a look at yourself for decency, for God's sake. Anyway, apart from anything else, it is relevant to football. And Darren, I am sceptical, because no matter what happens with fans' reviews and how they want to change things, I think clubs will look at it and say, listen, we're business people, we're running a business here. Don't meddle in our affairs.
I think that's what it'll be at the end of the day, Peter. I think you're right. I mean, he did say that Henry McLeish tried 15 years ago, and we've been trying to make Scottish football better, trying to bring more money into it, trying to give the fans bigger signings, and we've struggled to come to grips with that. And he's got his opinion. He'll have his Hearts hat on, but he was truthful there, that he did say about Hearts and how upset he is. But as Tam said, he mentioned Partick Thistle, who were 2 points behind with a game in hand. So it's not been nice, Peter. As I say, politics have come into it, which is not my strongest point, but it's not nice. And I don't know what we're going to do to try and improve this, try and improve Scottish football as a whole. There's always going to be self-interest. There has to be self-interest, because, as you said, it is a business. But can we get together, even with the fans group, the head of the fans group, and get together, and what road we go down to make, as I say, Scottish football better?
Yeah, absolutely, and a big thank you to Ian Murray for having the sparing us the time to come on the programme. He certainly didn't go down a road of putting it as a party political broadcast for anything. It was all to do with something that was relevant to him in a news sense. And again, sometimes some people who are critical of it, and they have been in the last half hour, maybe Club TV or a forum or something that you can see on your site that just says your team's great and that's it, and that's all you want to hear, is perfectly all right for you. But some of the people who are abusing, I don't care if you never come back to this channel. You need to think about the way you've been brought up. The next part is
Peter,
just finish, guys.
The great thing, Peter, if I can just say, the great thing about Ian Murray's interview there as well is that is probably the only time any of us this year are going to hear the lovely sound effects from an ape.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
I was sitting there nearly greeting. Oh, I nearly had the bucket and spade out. It's fantastic. Absolutely.
I don't think anybody will contest him going into one of the executive lounges, because there's nobody else there, to be honest with you. The Celtic side, interestingly enough, to take the field against Nice is Bain, Julian, Taylor, Brown, Christie, Edouard, El Yunusi, Frimpong, Ayer, McGregor and Forrest. Darren, that is your field. What do you make of that team?
It's a strong team to start with. He's obviously thought we'll go strong to start, and then, as Tam says, you change the team at half time. But yeah, I think it's a good team. As I say, it's a strong team. They're going to try and get a result, but obviously at this stage of the season, it's fitness.
Yeah,
a lot of rubbish.
Absolutely.
So they'll do that. They'll have that team out for the first half. Then second half, it'll be Martin Compton.
I just said that, Tam.
A couple of guys for the pantomime.
Yeah.
All the soccer aid guys. Garbage. Boo. Garbage.
To be fair, Tam, they have actually released the team for the second half, and it's Latchford, McGrain and Lynch. So that's the opening three. So there's no point in us continuing
I'd watch that. A bit of nostalgia.
Three quick points to finish. David Silva. Now, wait for this, Darren. David Silva, he's got 4 Premier League titles, 2 FA Cups, 5 League Cups, a World Cup, 2 European Championships. He scored a wonder goal last night. I don't think he's going to change his mind. He's leaving Manchester City at the end of the season. But I have to tell you, I would pay to watch David Silva up the park, just playing with the kids. He's just a magnificent footballer.
Sensational, Peter. He's just one of those players who just goes through games, doesn't cause it, and the ultimate professional. And he's kept Foden there. Like, I think he's kept Foden there. They could have easily put Foden out on loan to get him game time. But I think he's kept Foden there to train every day with David Silva, to go and take his mantle and just go and watch him, see how he conducts himself every single day, before games, after games. And he's just the ultimate professional and a superstar.
And the good news for us, Tam, is everybody keeps raving about Kieran Tierney down south. He played left centre back of a 3 for Arsenal last night, and I can only tell you what I discussed when I was in Steve Clarke's company. I know Tierney doesn't want to play right back. I think if we've got Andy Robertson fit and Kieran Tierney will play left centre back for Scotland.
Yeah, brilliant. Problem solved. I've always been of the opinion that if we have got 2 players of that calibre, just get the 2 of them in the team and then worry about it when they run onto the park. And if that's what we end up with for Scotland, with Kieran Tierney, as you say, left a central defence, and Andy Robertson at left back, absolutely fantastic. I'll go with that. And I just genuinely hope that Lee Griffiths can get himself back knocked into shape. That's the sore one for me, Roy. That's when I read about it, Peter. I'm not a Celtic fan, but I'm definitely a Scotland fan, and I was getting really excited about the Scotland team that's going to start back. We know we get the blow there with injury to Billy Gilmore, but I really want Lee Griffiths fit and back in that Scotland team, because what we forget during lockdown, when we've kind of switched off a wee bit for the football, that we are still only those 2 games away potentially from our first finals since Darren Jackson's day in 1998. So hopefully Lee Griffiths can get back. We know he's not in Lyon tonight. If he wants to get in the mood for it, maybe sit and watch it in the telly with a Lions Victoria sponge. That might be as close as he'll get.
Yeah, sort of Tunnock's tea cake as we watched him on one of the benches one day eat whole. How can anybody eat a Tunnock's tea cake whole? You have to take your time with it. Chocolate off first, Tam, then the white stuff, and then the last bit in your mouth. I mean, it's bog standard in Lanarkshire.
Absolutely, particularly the white stuff.
And on that note, all I was going to say to you is don't forget to like, share and follow us. And of course, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you don't like the programme, remember, there's always TikTok. But over and above that, subscribe to us if you can. Like, share and follow us. I don't know. I am actually flying the flag for people with good morals. I hope you join us tomorrow if you can. From Tam, Darren and myself, Peter Martin, to the good people who love their club and are passionate about football. Thanks for watching.